It happens to be that It's a Wonderful World is one of the first games I covered on this channel way back in the day. Did a Play This Not That with 7 Wonders, but I never played Corruption and Ascension, and I want to see how that changed the game for me. Hey, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co. and today we're reviewing It's a Wonderful World and the expansion Corruption and Ascension from Le Botte de Jeu, distributed by Lucky Duck Games. And It's a Wonderful World is a drafting game of gathering cards, building said cards, and across 4 rounds of play, coming up with the most impressive scoring engine. I'm going to go ahead and go through the teach and review of this, covering It's a Wonderful World and the Corruption and Ascension expansion included with it. I'll try to point out what the expansion adds and the differences. It's not a lot in terms of what it adds, but I'll go through all of that, starting off, well, with the game. Across 4 rounds of play, you're going to be drafting cards clockwise or counterclockwise every single round as you go across 1, 2, 3, and 4 rounds of play. In every single round, you're going to draw cards from the main deck and from the Corruption and Ascension deck. This is going to be expansion that's added. This would not be the case in a normal game. In a normal game, you would just draw cards from this deck, but with the expansion, you get to choose any number of cards. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and draw 4 cards from the main deck, and I'm going to draw 3 from the Corruption and Ascension. And the part that's interesting here is the fact that I'm drawing 4 and 3 only has a minimal impact on me because it's going to impact who I draft cards to as well. Sure, I chose 3 from this deck, but it's not 3 for me. It's 3 that will be drafted around to all the players, and they'll have to figure out what they want. From there, I'm going to go ahead and take a look at my cards and figure out which cards to take. Like a typical drafting game, you're going to be choosing a card, and this is where we'll go through the general card format over here. The top left of a card is what it takes to build the card, the specific resources you'll need to build that card in your engine. The bottom of the card is going to be what the card gives you when it's going to be what the card generates every single round once it's built. Cards are going to generate resources for you, those resources being utilized to build other cards. This recycling bonus over here is a bonus that you get if you choose not to build a card, but instead discard it at any point. You could do so after you've invested in it, but generally that's going to be inefficient. And then we have other bonuses, such as in this card, this Offshore Oil Rig gives you a one-time build effect bonus of this token over here, one of these, when you build that card. And then lastly, we have some scoring cards. This is going to be a scoring card that's going to give you a green resource for each yellow building you have every production round, but it's also going to give you 2 points. And then we have some of the Corruption and Ascension cards. These are fun ones over here. This is going to give you 6 points for every black and beige or gray or whatever card that you have. So for every set of those cards you have, you'll get 6 points. If you have 5 black cards and 3 of the gray cards, that means you have a set of 3 sets, which means you'll have 18 points from that. That's what the cards are giving you over here. These are the cards you're going to be drafting. You're trying to think through, okay, great, how is it going to work? How am I going to build my engine? What resources do I currently produce with my starting card? What resources am I currently building with my other cards? Which cards do I want to cash in and recycle in order to get the bonus, in order to get my engine up and running faster? That's what you're doing as you grab these cards. And so you're going to go ahead and draft. You're going to go ahead and grab the cards. You're going to pick a card. Maybe I go ahead and start off with, right now I'm producing some yellow over here. And since I know I'm producing some yellow, maybe I go ahead and grab that university off the bat. I'll be able to use these 2 yellow to produce that, as long as I can get a green card. I pass them around, grab a few new cards from the player passed to me, look for any green bonuses. Looks like I have no green discard bonuses. That's going to be important, because if I can get a green, then I'll be able to start utilizing this card, which would be great, but I can't, so let's focus on something else. Let's see if I can get a cheap, nope. This one's all yellow. All yellow is not bad, because this will also give me more yellow, so I'm going to go ahead and grab the Propaganda Center. Again, passing these off to play on the left. Let's grab some more cards from other players. We're down to 5 cards or 6 cards, whatever is left. Do you have any green bonuses? Still no green bonuses, but if I have a yellow, you know what? I'm going to grab this yellow, because at the very least, now I know. Well, let's go ahead and play it out. Let's show you what's going on there. Grabbing some cards, grabbing some more cards, just pretending to emulate a draft over here. Over here, this card's not a bad card. It's a little cheap over here, but I can probably get away. You know what? I'm going heavy on the yellow, so let's lean into it heavily. I'm going to grab this Consortium, and now let's just grab one more card at the top and pretend this is my final set of cards, which I'd actually have 2 more cards. So let's pretend this is my final set of cards in the opening draft. This is what I ended up with. These are the cards I have, and now I'm going to put them all out in my grid and try to make decisions around how to actually build out these cards. So I have my 7 cards, and let's see what we can do with them. Let's move this off to the side. Let's move this a little over. Normally I'd structure this a little differently. I'm just trying to get this all on camera for you so you can see everything over here. And so over here, we have to start making decisions. I know full well that I will be able to go ahead. Oh, look, I have a green, but this is a green from itself. It doesn't help me at all. I will go ahead. I think I'm going to keep this card. I'm going to get rid of this card generating a yellow resource. So I'm going to discard that card into the discard pile. I'm going to grab a yellow resource, and I'm going to put it on this card, which means I know full well I'll be able to build that. But honestly, I may be able to get this up and running faster. So I think I'm actually going to go ahead and cash out these over here now. These 2 right now, I'm going to cash both of these out. So we're going to get rid of both of these cards again for 2 more yellow bonuses. That's going to enable me to immediately build the Propaganda Center. So I now have the Propaganda Center built. I'm going to return these yellow resources, and I'll build this over here, up here. Let's go ahead and put this off to the side so you can kind of see what's going on. You're going to be stacking all the cards here in your production engine so you can see all of that. And these cards are currently in progress. From there, we're going to go ahead and start going through the production chain. Once you've done all this, once you've decided, and you can keep cards and choose to discard them later, which often you'll do unless there's a specific reason why you didn't. In my case, there was a specific reason. Let's go ahead and go through the production engine and show you how this plays out. One at a time, you're going to go through the 5 engines over here. The gray, the black, the green, the yellow, and then the blue. You're going to go through all of those one at a time and see what you can do over there. Starting with the gray, I'm going to go ahead and generate a gray resource. The problem is you have to have a place to put that resource. The good news is I do. I can put that resource over here, so that's going to go towards that card to start building the tank division over here. When you're done with that, you're going to look to see who generated the most gray, and the player who generated the most gray will get, in this case, one of these, and they'll be able to add that. I'm going to pretend it's not me because I only generated 1, and we'll see what other players do. From there, we're going to move to the next engine, where you go ahead and generate black resources. I don't have any black resources being generated, so nothing will happen there. Whoever generated the most black will get one of these over here. Fine. We move to the green. I generate no green. Someone else would get, again, 1 token of their choice. We move to yellow. Yellow, I'm going to generate 3 yellow, which is pretty awesome. I'm going to immediately grab those 3 yellows, and I'm going to put 2 of them on this over here, because I think it's more likely I can finish that. I'm going to put 1 over there, and we'll see what happens there. And then from there, we go ahead to the next spot, which is going to be, and over there, I'm going to pretend I got this token. Let's grab that and take that. And then lastly, we go to blue, where I generate no blue, and that's a production round. Generally, what will happen in the production round, depending on when you're playing or which round you're in, at times you will go ahead and create a card with 1 chain of production, and then be able to immediately utilize that card for the next chain of production. So even though there's only 4 rounds of play, each round is divided into 5 stages, and within each stage, you may be building things towards the next stage already, so it ends up feeling like more than 4 rounds, even though it's still technically 4 rounds. That's the game. That's what it is. I mean, that's basically what it is. Let's go ahead and fast forward a bit through a few rounds of play. Let's gather some cards and see what we can do here. So as far as building things, let's pretend I've built this card over here, and I've built this card over here, because you're going to do that for 4 rounds. You're going to draft every single round. You're going to be continuously adding. You'll have a bunch of cards. I'm going to just grab a few scoring cards from different piles over here and see if I can generate some kind of end game situation. Let's grab this polar base. Let's pretend this is built over here, and then let's grab this one over here and that over here. Let's just pretend this is the end game, and we'll grab a few tokens. There are some more complications I'm not really getting into, but let's go ahead and just pretend this is the situation. So, end game, you go over here, you look at your cards. Over here, I get 2 points for every yellow card, and since I have 1, 2, 3, 4, that's going to be 8 points. That 9, 10, 11, 12, those are just static points over there. This is going to be another 8, that brings me to 20. 2 points for every blue card with 2 blue cards, brings me to 24. And then over here, I have 5 of these tokens, which are worth 1 point each, which brings me to 29, and that would be my end score. Not a great score, but also it's all fictional, and I just made it up at the last minute there, so that's basically what's going on. And that's everything. The Corruption and Ascension expansion, as far as what it adds before we get into the review, the Corruption and Ascension expansion just adds new cards. That's all it adds. It adds a new deck of cards that you can grab cards from this deck, and the 2 new things that this deck adds is it adds things which negate your production. So over here, for example, we have Inquisitors. This will negate your production by a green, which if you don't have any green, doesn't really hurt you. But as you start getting green, that might hurt you, which leads to interesting strategies as far as how you can double down on some of the colors you're not good at, taking fictional losses, but also restricting yourself in that color, which is a tough one. Additionally, it adds some of these like 25-point scoring cards, which are a lot of fun, but it adds these over here that will score you points for sets of cards. Every set of green and yellow is worth 9 points. If you heavily lean into something like that, you can get a ton of points from those, and that's basically primarily what the Corruption and Ascension expansion adds. More cards with specific new aspects as far as the way they interact with the game. Nothing major, but overall a solid thing, which we'll talk about more in final thoughts. Which brings us to the review. Review of the game, starting off the bat with ease of play. Rules are incredibly easy on this game. I mean, there's scenarios as well for solo play. I haven't dived into solo play, so I can't comment on that. But past that, the base rules for the base game are incredibly accessible, incredibly easy to dive into. This entire rulebook is, I mean, let's see how long this is. It's not long. It's got 1 page of, playing the game, and then a page full of pictures and minimal text. And there we are. We're done already. This is the 2-player mode, the solo mode. We're already done. It's a handful of pages, and the Corruption and Ascension expansion is a joke. It's like 3 paragraphs of rules. It takes you 2 seconds to read it. And this is an easy game to teach, an easy game to learn, an easy game to play, an easy game to dive into. Comes in at roughly generally 45 minutes to an hour. Very accessible both in table space, time, all the things. It's an easy game to play. As far as player count, this is a 1 to 5 player game. I've played this at 2 and 3 and 4 players. I have not played it at 5, and based on playing it at 4, I don't think I would. I think I like it most at 3 players, while enjoying it at, well, all 2, 3, and 4 I've enjoyed it at all, but I do like it most at 3 players, and 4 slowed it down a bit. 1 player, I've not played any of the scenarios they have there, so I can't comment on that. They give you a bunch of scenarios to go through. I don't know much exactly. I just kind of briefly read over it. But that would be the player count. As far as what I like, don't like, and conceal as not liking. Starting off the bat, with the satisfying end game that you're driving for. To me, It's a Wonderful World is a game that starts off slow. We'll talk about more about that and the things that I don't like, but one of the things that is enjoyable is when you get towards that end game, that third and fourth round, more the fourth round, honestly, the fourth round of play, as you really start to cash in on some of these big cards you've been working on the whole game, as you grab these 25-point cards or whatever you scoring cards you have, as you slowly build things out that will give you tons of points for a specific combination. You're doubling down on a particular color of cards, you're doubling down on some of these tokens and using cards that will give you extra points for the tokens you have. There are very satisfying endgame conditions to be had here. There are very satisfying ways to approach the endgame, getting a chunk of points for a whole lot of things, and you spent your whole game, that last hour of play, you spent that building up towards that endgame. And you're doing so with cards that seem like you'll never be able to buy them. When you start off playing It's a Wonderful World, everything seems expensive. Everything seems like you'll never be able to build it. That first round of play, if you're playing with new players, that first round of play, every single time I have people who are like, are we playing this right? Because it doesn't feel like we're playing this right, and you are playing this right. Just the first round is incredibly slow, but that also makes the end game that much more satisfying as you build a card that costs you like 14 resources, and you're like, how in the world did I do that? Well, time, effort, dedication, 4 rounds, tableau building, all those general answers, but you do have a very satisfying endgame here. Also, of course, drafting. This is a drafting game. I love drafting games. Drafting is my favorite mechanic, period, bar none, and this is drafting, and it's drafting that matters. You will have cards that you want to see come back to you, and they don't, and that is frustrating. You will have to choose between 2 cards that are better for your engine. You'll have to make a choice, and that is frustrating. And then the fact that there's recycling bonuses means other players will take cards that aren't even good for them just because they need a black cube, and you're like, that card wasn't even... There's so much more you could have done with that card. There's so much more I could have done with that card. It's drafting, and I like the drafting and the comboing of the scoring, of the abilities. Not really abilities so much, but just the way cards interact, the things they'll give you, the extra resources they'll give you, all of that is very fun. And then the daisy chaining of production. The way production works in this game, where you're going from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, where you're slowly moving through your chain over here, gives you opportunities to get more done in a 4-round game, to feel almost like it's maybe 6 or 7 rounds. It's because you got these stages, and the stages let you do more. It lets you build a card with one stage, build the next card with the next stage, and suddenly, before you know it, you have 4 cards when you started the stage off with 1, and you feel a lot more powerful. You feel like you're getting more done in the game. Overall, it is a very satisfying drafting, tableau building, production engine with a very satisfying endgame. But there's things I don't like as well, starting off with the fact that I do not like the endgame luck. Early game, it's fine. Early game, you draw cards, you have what you have, you draft cards, you get cards, all that stuff's totally fine. As you approach endgame, you're going to start needing certain cards. You're going to start needing that card that can discard for a single blue. You're going to start needing that card that works well with your engine. And the cards you draw endgame, you can't plan around that. You can plan around the first 2 rounds of the game. The 3rd round, barely. The 4th round, absolutely not. You get that amazing card that's perfect for your engine in the 4th round of play, you just might not be able to build it. It would have been great had you gotten it the 1st round, or the 2nd round. The 3rd round, you possibly could have still done stuff with it, but you got it too late. It does not help, and it doesn't even give you a production bonus, a recycling bonus, that will help with your engine. There's definitely luck in the game, but there's more luck in the later parts of the game when you can't react anymore as efficiently to those big commitments that you might otherwise need. And then combine with the fact that the first 2 rounds of play feel like you get nothing done. Like I said already, whenever I play this game with new players, they are always confused that first game. They are always uncertain as, okay, I think I built 1 card this turn, and it's mostly through recycling stuff, and you're saying there's 4 rounds of play, so I'll build 4 cards this game. That seems fun. Why don't we go back to some other game, Alex? Other games are better. That happens inevitably every game I play of It's a Wonderful World. That does happen. Not necessarily with everyone, but it happens with people at the table. And I feel the same way. The first time I played this game, I absolutely felt that same way. And more than that, when I dive into the game again, I feel the same way. Every time I dive into the game, I feel like the first round of play is just irritating. It's irritating because I didn't get enough done. The 2nd round of play, I get a little bit done. The 3rd round, things start moving along nicely. And the 4th round is where I start playing the game. But it also means that I tend to feel half the game is a build-up of less satisfying stuff, and the second half of the game is the actual consequence, the actual result of everything you've been working towards. And so it is a little slow-moving initially. It catches up, it does the job, but it's slow-moving initially. As far as I can see, others not liking, first of all, lots of AP here. Lots of analysis paralysis in this game. This is a game where you're looking at a hand of 7 cards. You're looking at a whole bunch of options here. And you're trying to say, well, if I cash in this, that gives me a cycle bonus. If I use this over here, I might be able to do this. If I build this first and then we daisy chain to this production over here, that will give me the extra 2 that I need to build this. But instead, what if I just generate these and I turn those 5 resources into that? Because I didn't talk about this, but any 5 resources can be converted into a red over there, which can act as a wild, but sometimes it's necessary. And so you have all these choices and all these thoughts you're trying to go through, all these decisions as far as how you can make everything work with your current tableau, with your existing production run, and then with all the cards you're drafting, and it's a lot. It is a lot. It's a lot of commitment. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of effort to make it all work smoothly. And you can do so either by making decisions or min-maxing every last thing and rethinking every single option, which means this is like a game that does drag with AP players. It drags a little bit the more players you add in general, but it drags even more with AP prone players. And then lastly, the lack of theme. This is not a theme-heavy game. Sure, we have these cards. We have our super soldiers and our tank division and our mega drill and our zeppelin, and we have the military base. And theoretically, the colors, maybe they have some sort of association. Museum is more science-based. Ark of the Covenant. I don't know. I don't know what the theme is of the game. There's cards. The cards have stuff on them, and the stuff is relevant to actually trying to come up with an efficient endgame. There's a theme kind of maybe here, but not one that I personally get out of it, and not one, which, to be fair, not one that I personally get out of it, but I don't need the theme, which is why I put this in what I can see others not liking. As far as final thoughts on It's a Wonderful World and Corruption and Ascension Expansion, I'm going to start off with the Corruption and Ascension Expansion, in the sense that it absolutely makes this game better for me. Not even a question. I played It's a Wonderful World a while ago, way back in the day. I played it, I really enjoyed it, had a lot of fun with it. Eventually it left my collection. There are other games that I prefer. I compared to Seven Wonders. I prefer what Seven Wonders does, and while I enjoyed It's a Wonderful World, it was a game that I enjoyed and eventually felt I'd rather play Seven Wonders. I got back to the Corruption and Ascension Expansion. I got back to the whole thing with the Corruption and Ascension Expansion, and I really like the cards it adds. It's not adding a lot. To be very clear, this is a very small expansion. But I like what it does. I like the cards that give you tiered scoring for different combos and pairs. I like the fact that there's cards that give you negative results, which you can have these fun little combinations of, ooh, I'm going to go heavily negative on green, and that means I do have to figure out where I'm getting green for my other cards, but there's opportunities for that. You can get recycle bonuses, there's things you can do, there's games you can play. I like how it lets you lean further into specific directions and get those satisfying large scoring cards at the end of the day. I like the Corruption and Ascension cards. At the end of the day, for me, this one, base game alone, I'd give this one a 3.5 out of 5. I enjoy it, I like it, but there are some complaints around it, and I don't find it as satisfying as I otherwise would like to. With the Corruption and Ascension expansion, it definitely moves up to a 4 to 5. I like the additional cards. I like what it adds. It's a very, very solid game. Not without complaints. Not without complaints at all. I still find that I like other games in the genre a bit more, but I really do enjoy the combination of drafting, the tableau building. All of that stuff is a very rewarding engine from the two games. That's It's a Wonderful World. It's a Wonderful World Corruption and Ascension expansion. As far as other game recommendations, first of all, Seven Wonders. I still compare this one to Seven Wonders back in the day. I'm going to compare it now. I find both these games give you a fun drafting, tableau building game, one across 4 rounds, one across 3 rounds, different ways they handle it, different ways they do it. But Seven Wonders to me is a fantastic experience that has continued to be a fantastic experience for me for the past 11 years of gaming now. And then Furnace, a recent addition that kind of feels similar to It's a Wonderful World, is Furnace. I find Furnace is a great tableau building game that very different in its implementation, very different in the way it handles it, but it has that kind of mechanical aspect of having different resources, converting this into that, using all that, building a bunch of cards. It feels very similar to what It's a Wonderful World is doing for me, but in a very, very different way. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, have a good one.